This is again a professor of psychology, Dan Ariely, who did this experiment. He gave students a few objects to value. But first he said, write down your last 2 digits of your social security number and put a dollar sign on that. So this many dollars. So suppose the number ends with 89. So you put $89 like that. Yeah. And then he would say, would you pay this price for these commodities?
So Nimesh, deviating from all this serious stuff that we've spoken about across our podcasts, there's this very interesting thing how magicians and mentalists oftentimes guess the cards or the numbers that we choose, right? So is there any explanation with regards to this on how they're able to predict that we're making these choices?
So actually they prime you to take a particular number or a card. So I was going through this famous magician's work, Darren Brown. Darren Brown, he made one video where he could make you think a card remotely, like, on YouTube or something. So what he does is he takes a pack of cards, he shuffles them, and he keeps one card in his hand, but it doesn't show you that this is the card. But he says, now I'll mentally transmit that card to you. And then he says, now, think of in your vivid screen of your mind, there are some numbers which are going through, and there is something in the center, and now you guess the card. Most people guess the 3 of diamonds. And then he reveals the card, it is the 3 of diamonds. So I try to study a little more about why this happens. So in his book, he's written about he's disclosed some of the tricks. So he said when he does this trick, what he does is he first says, think about a vivid screen on your mind. So vivid gives you the color red. And he keeps his fingers and thumbs in a diamond kind of shape. Then when he says, think about the numbers on the side. So he takes 2 fingers and a thumb and shows you the kind of number 3 on the side. And then he says, now there is something in the center, and he says, boom, boom, boom. So what he's doing is, and most people don't even realize that they are being primed to think of a 3 of diamonds. Now, other psychologists also experimented a little bit on this, and they actually get very good results that people can be primed. Our minds get anchored, or they get hooked onto something, and that impacts our decision making. And you would have seen marketeers use that trick, right? They actually show you a particular price, and then they give you a discount on that. So actually they are selling you the stuff at the price they want to. But you are anchored, or you're hooked onto a particular price, and then the discount shows up.
So then are we referring to the anchoring bias here, or is there another bias at play?
So you're absolutely right. Anchoring is one of the strongest biases of humankind. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, they did this experiment where they had a wheel, like a wheel of fortune or so, with 1 to 100 numbers written on it. And they would ask the participants to come and turn that wheel. They had rigged the wheel to either stop at number 10 or number 65. And then participants were told, you note down this number, and then they were asked 2 questions. What percentage of African nations are part of the UN? Is it this percentage, the number that you got? And the second question was, if this is not the number, what other number do you think? Now, the spinning of the wheel and the number coming has absolutely no correlation to us thinking about how many African nations will be part of UN. So we would think it doesn't affect, but it did. The average number guessed by the participants who got 10 was 25%. And the people who had 65, the average was 45%. So it did affect their decision making. Anchoring means you are subconsciously anchored, or you start giving preference to a particular number or a particular image in your mind. And that affects our decision making, and it happens quite subconsciously, I would say.
Right. So then, the natural question is, how does one overcome this? Is there any explanation, in all the studies that you've gone through or what you've seen? And then more importantly, I think one should always correlate it to markets. So we'll divide the question.
So let's correlate it to the markets first. How does it impact, say, how we value things? This is again a professor of psychology, Dan Ariely, who did this experiment. He gave students a few objects to value. But first he said, write down your last 2 digits of your social security number and put a dollar sign on that. So this many dollars. So suppose the number ends with 89. So you put $89 like that. And then he would say, would you pay this price for these commodities? And he had kept things like expensive wine, Belgian chocolates and all, where you are not able to assess the price very quickly. Some of the things you remember, like, okay, iPhone price is this also. He had kept certain things which are a little difficult to value. And he saw this anchoring playing in that people's mind. So it affects people in decision making in markets also. Whether we like it or not, price movements, if we watch them closely, they affect. For example, the cost of purchase, cost of acquisition for any security. That we get anchored to very easily, and that determines our buy and sell decisions. One of the psychologists had gone, Amos Tversky actually, had gone to a financial advisor. He said, this is my portfolio, what do you think I should change? So the financial advisor asked, you've not given me the cost of these securities. So Amos asked, how does it matter? That means we subconsciously bring that into our decision making. Second thing people get affected by is the 52-week high and low. 52-week high, people start thinking, oh, I have missed this stock. 52-week low means this is an opportunity to look at it. Now, what actually determines the future of these securities is actually the business and what valuation they may be trading at, rather than the 52-week high or low price. Even professional investors many times make mistakes. Like analysts, for example, there was a study done which says that analysts get anchored to their estimates. And if there is a positive or negative surprise in the results, they adjust these to say little less than what is required, or they keep it nearer to their previous estimates. And that's why they continue to be negatively surprised, as the security keeps doing well or business keeps doing badly. So there are a lot of these which come into, actually I think of one more. In a sector, typically what people do is they look at which is the highest price stock. And then from there measure which is the other one to buy. Oh, this is cheaper, I will buy that. Now what you're doing is you are anchoring yourself to the high valuation. Maybe that number is wrong. And maybe this business doesn't deserve that. So people get, say, anchored to wrong things. And then they get affected by it. So I think your next question was how can we overcome it? How can we overcome it? Anchoring cannot be avoided. So we have to consciously make an effort to start anchoring on the right things. Now let's take another example now. If somebody asks you, which year was Mahatma Gandhi born? I have no clue. But what I do is I think about, he was assassinated sometime after independence. So let's take 1948. And in all the images, he looked very old and frail. Visibly old. So let's say he's many years. 80 years old. So we come to an approximate number of 1868 is what possibly he was born in. The actual answer is 1869. Very close. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to consciously anchor ourselves to the right thing. Now let's, in financial markets, for example, make your own valuation before you look at what the market is valuing that company on. Otherwise, you get anchored on the market valuation. Based on fundamentals. Based on fundamentals. So then you avoid that bias of getting anchored with what the people are thinking about this. I make my own calculations. Maybe some of the other things that people can practice, especially for long-term investing. You look at growth rates of companies or their valuations over a long cycle. Don't get anchored to the recent past. If you typically, how would we quantify the length of a cycle? When you say long, it would mean 10 years, 15 years? Is that a... Depends on the business. So for some cyclical businesses, the cycle can be about 3 to 5 years also. And some of the long cycle businesses like consumer cycles, you have to look at about 10 years or 15 years also. So take the appropriate benchmark. But there are always base rates based on long-term trends that you can anchor on. You adjust it then upwards or downwards based on current conditions. But anchor on the right things. I think that's what is the solution.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risk. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.